As somebody who writes about fashion and politics, and sometimes fashion in politics, there's a lot of people who are like, oh, it's sexist to write about what the women candidates are wearing or what, such and such a woman governor is wearing. But actually, I think it's a totally valid form of political analysis, because these are people whose whole lives are lived in public, and they're public figures of utmost importance in American life. And they spend a lot of time thinking about what they're going to wear. So they are deliberately making a statement when they put on clothing. And, when Hillary Clinton grew her hair out when she was Secretary of State and would wear ponytails and scrunchies, like, to me, that said, I am flying on planes a lot. I'm in foreign countries a lot without somebody to do my hair. This is my utilitarian hairstyle. Or Elizabeth Warren during the Democratic primary was always wearing flowing slacks and a cardigan. She wasn't in a suit and she wasn't in a tailored dress. She was in something that she could run around in because she was campaigning. She sees herself as a woman of the people. And that was the image that she was projecting. It was completely deliberate. And I want to call out Kirsten Sinema, who's a senator from Arizona, who honestly, some of her clothing choices I wouldn't make for myself, but she is one of the boldest dressers in the Senate. I almost don't care what she's wearing. The fact that she shows up from a pretty conservative state, historically conservative state, as a bisexual woman wearing her hair dyed blue and a fluffy pink jacket, I give her so much credit for that. And I don't always agree with her politically, but I feel fondly toward her because she's willing to be herself. That's a political decision she's making, especially in these incredibly slow-moving, male-dominated places of power.
Christina Cauterucci is a senior editor at Slate magazine and is one of the most inspirational people that I met while working there. She covers a wide variety of topics from politics to culture and gender, and she's also a host on Slate's Outward podcast covering issues that impact the LGBTQ communities, and was previously a host on the Waves podcast, which focused on gender-related issues. In this episode, we'll take a walk through her personal style journey, the importance of defining your own voice through clothes, and the growing shift towards inclusion in the industry. And just a quick note, this conversation took place last year in the thick of the pandemic and in the midst of so much political uncertainty. But we took a fashion moment, to reconnect. Enjoy.
Hello.
Hey, good to see you.
How are you?
Good.
OMG. I know you got a lot going on right now, so I appreciate you.
I mean, it's been good to be able to think about something besides everything else, to be perfully honest. How are you doing?
We are going to take a fashion break from the madness. Just holding up as best as I can, I have to remind myself, this is not a time like any other, and it's okay to feel the feelings and at times maybe not be okay. We're human, and to just act like it's another day, like it was back in, January would be silly,
Yeah.
So just to own that, some days are better than others, but ultimately together as a country, there's a lot to work through and be done.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, yeah, I feel like I'm living through a nightmare right now. But I'm trying to focus more on small moments that feel normal and reminding myself that I know so many wonderful people in the world and that not everyone is terrible and that some people are actually trying their best to make things better.
Thank you for coming on the show, Christina. You are amazing. Christina is a phenomenal writer, iconic for Slate magazine. And God knows, like, you know, she has the podcast going on. She has her own podcast, Outward. And also I'm missing
The
one.
Waves.
The Waves. I need to catch up on The Waves.
The Waves has been on hiatus, actually. Yeah, we went on hiatus during the pandemic. And we're hoping to restart and revamp once things calm down a little bit, if things ever calm down a little bit.
There's so much to cover.
I know.
You guys are going to be digging through that.
Yeah. We're going to spend all of 2021 just recapping 2020.
I freaking love it. Well, I would love to start from the beginning. You're one of the most fashionable people I've ever witnessed.
That's untrue, but thank you.
No, you are, because you do it in your own way and you say things like with your clothes that I'm like, how in the world did Christina come up with this combo? And it's like, so you know, it's like the details. So essentially, you know, who are you? Where were you born? Where were you raised? Where are you from?
So I was born in New Jersey, in a small suburb.
You're like in a small. I was like, you're a Jersey? Did I know that?
Yeah. So, and I come from many generations of Jersey girls and boys on both my parents' sides, but then moved to New Hampshire when I was 9 for my dad's job. Not, as you would imagine, a hub of forward-thinking fashion. Then I came to DC for college and never left.
Sounds
and that
like
was
me.
Too many years ago.
What? You mean like when you were 5? You look great, girl. I know what you're talking about. So what was your earliest fashion memory? Like the earliest one you could remember?
I was always big into dress up. I did dance and gymnastics, and I have a very vivid memory of one outfit that I had. I don't know where I got it, but it was a white spandex jumpsuit with rainbow hearts on it and sequin trim. And it came with, I don't even know what, they were like leg warmers for your arms. It was like wrist to elbow spandex with pink fringe coming off.
Cute.
I think I was about 4 or 5 and very into, you know, anything, every sort of embellishment. And I spent so much time in that jumpsuit, no matter the weather. I also remember being really jealous that my sister needed glasses. My older sister, who I idolized, I had perfect vision, and I was so jealous that she had to wear glasses. So I had a pair of Barbie sunglasses that were plastic frames, and I popped out the lenses and would wear just the empty frames, like to preschool.
That's like so chic. I would totally wear those like right now. I think that's such a now thing. But
yeah,
like
it is.
But like, do we have pictures of this?
I started that trend. I definitely have one in the jumpsuit that I can definitely.
I need it. Oh my goodness. I love. So what was your favorite look in high school? Let's go to high school.
Oh man, this is the total U-turn now. Yes, this is total U-turn. So I was a big hippie in high school. I was really into classic rock, played guitar, sang in bands, and I would, you know, I was very into like hemp necklaces, tie-dye, really long, straggly hair, lot of thrift store shopping. And then I would buy a lot of band t-shirts, cut them up. I bought a sewing machine, would like sew them into little crop tops. I made my own prom dress actually out of a Guns N' Roses flag. Cause I was like, my fashion at the time for me was very much a way of rebelling against like the common or the mainstream high school vibe. So I was like, not into preppy clothes, not into labels. I'm wearing my peace sign earrings. Like I basically had a one note thing to say with fashion, which was like, I'm different, but also I'm part of this very established alternative culture, you know?
Wow.
Part of me was like striking out on my own and putting together my own combos from whatever I could buy for cheap at thrift stores. But a lot of it was just about, you know, saying I'm not buying into your like consumerist, trend, like slave to trend, culture that was really dominant at my high school.
Where did that sense come from?
No idea. I mean, I was starting to develop my tastes in art and my political leanings, and I felt like my clothes had to telegraph that to other people. Like that was a very big part of my identity, was like being into music, like spending hours in my room with my headphones on or not, blasting music. And I felt like one way that I could find other people who shared my interests was to dress a certain way, to wear like political t-shirts or band t-shirts. And I felt like, this is how I'm going to find my people.
So who were you listening to? You said Guns N' Roses. Who else is on
yeah.
that lineup?
That was Axl Rose was a big fashion icon for me. I listened to a lot of Led Zeppelin. I loved, Metallica.
Oh, you were hardcore. Oh my God.
I loved, who else? I feel like I dressed like I was going to Woodstock. I loved Jimi Hendrix. Like, let's turn on any classic rock radio. I was like not very creative, or I wasn't like delving into any deep cuts, but I was also really into contemporary alternative rock. So Incubus, I was obsessed.
Oh my gosh, I love Incubus. So don't you even get me started on Incubus. I love me some Incubus.
Yeah, even now, like the other day, one of their songs came on like a Spotify playlist or something, and I was just immediately transported back to these moments where I felt every feeling so deeply.
I'm like, pardon me while I burp. Okay.
Oh my God, yes. What a great channel for all my angst.
I know. I still tune into my inner Incubus self.
Oh, good.
Let's transport into, how would you define your style now?
So one big realization I made that has defined my fashion journey is that you can be feminine without being girly. And realizing that there is a mature femininity out there that is about power and strength, and not just necessarily about like cutesiness or being demure, which all power to people who love that style of clothing. But I always felt like I didn't identify with, besides when I was a young child, like pink, like flowy ruffles or anything. But when I realized that you could incorporate some elements of femininity into clothes that really made a dramatic statement, that's where I find myself now. So I love, when I do ruffles, they're very architectural. I love bold patterns, bold shoulders. I wear a lot of shoulder pads and like puffy sleeves.
They're coming back.
They are. And I'm so happy about it.
Wild.
I feel like Tracee Ellis Ross is a huge fashion icon of mine. I love the way she does, every time she gets on the red carpet, she's having so much fun with it. And it's all about really statement making gowns that are, that when she walks into a room, you would not necessarily say it's pretty. It's that she's gorgeous and stunning. It like really, all the light shines on her, and she doesn't wear things that you have to cross your legs in, or that like trap her body in any way. She's like just brings so much energy into the room with her and what she's wearing, and that's the kind of stuff that I love too. And I still find a lot of clothes at consignment shops and thrift stores because I'm a journalist. I don't make a ton of money, but I have expensive taste and I love fashion. And so
I know the feeling.
Yeah. I end up wearing a lot of vintage clothes too. Another one of my style icons is Elizabeth Jennings on The Americans, played by Kerry Russell. With the shoulder pads, you probably already figured out, but I love 80s style and like 80s professional workwear.
Oh my God, that show. Every
I know.
look.
I wish I was watching it from the beginning all over again. Like these like long coats with big collars, pussy bows. A lot of my like professional shirts have a bow at the neck. which is, again, like a kind of femininity that projects strength, which is a theme for me.
I was going to ask you, you mentioned, that there is, or that you've recognized the difference between femininity and girliness. Like, how would you define each of like, what is the difference in your opinion of that?
I feel like there is a style of clothing that is, you might describe it as romantic, very soft, curving lines, ruffles, slight floral patterns, muted tones. And I've always not felt like myself in clothing like that. But I always thought like, oh, then I must be, maybe I'm more of a tomboy, or maybe I'm more of like a goth or grunge, or maybe I'm, But then I realized like I wasn't rejecting femininity at all. I consider myself a very feminine person. What I was rejecting was the sort of softness of it. And when I feel most myself, it's in something more strong and statement making, which you can still incorporate a lot of those, floral patterns and ruffles and layers and skirts. You can still incorporate things like that into the clothes that I like wearing. But when they do so, it's in a much bolder and starker way.
Absolutely. You basically just, gave me the revelation of my entire childhood. I was like, what was going, I was a skater, so I was wearing board shorts, and, I felt like there were, okay, am I a tomboy? Like you said, there were these two extremes that people expected you to sort of fall into. And there were just certain things I was not comfortable in. My sister, she'd have her little, crop tops and ruffles and stuff. And I'm like, I'm not into it, but like you said, it does not mean that, you as a person do not identify as being feminine. And I love a bow too. And I would occasionally wear a tie, and it's like, oh, well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
So, I say, do what you want, define yourself. And, there's been so much happening, not only in the world, but also, fashions reflecting those changes as well. There's been a lot of talk about, having genderless shows, like what is gender, being more inclusive. Oh, you know what? Maybe we should include Black people on the runway.
Mind blown.
Mind blown. Or maybe someone who's, I don't know, a little bigger than a size, 8. Which is wild. So, these changes are happening. I think we've seen sprinkles over time, but it seems like now with so much global angst and, the pandemic and, racial unrest that, wow, I looked at Vogue and I was like, oh my God, is this Essence? Is this Essence magazine? Is that Janet Mock and Valentina? Literally the first, Lizzo's on the cover. And then I open it and I'm like, oh my God, that's Janet Mock, the first ad you see for Valentina. I'm like, okay, what is happening?
It's an ad campaign?
Yes.
Wow.
I know.
That's amazing. They're lucky to get Janet Mock.
Okay. Boop. But, it's like, okay, we're seeing these changes, but, we've seen changes before. Do you think, just from the coverage that you've been doing around the country as it relates to changes in the US right now, do you think this is a moment or a movement? What's your inkling about this? And are we going in the right direction here? Obviously, yes, but what are your thoughts in terms of how the industry is tackling this? And is there hope for, actual change?
I have to say the changes that I've seen this summer and the first couple months of the fall in 2020 have made me more hopeful than ever in terms of inclusivity in fashion and journalism, in part because, almost all the credit goes to employees at a lot of these companies, at fashion magazines, at fashion labels, in retail. Black employees, other employees of color, standing up and saying, actually, we have power here and we want to see changes happen. I've been paying a lot of attention to how that's played out in journalism, where actually changes have been made, in terms of hiring, in terms of leadership. A lot of magazines are now, it almost seems tokenizing when you look at it as a trend in terms of like putting their first Black senior editor in or something like that. But I actually think it's a smart business proposition at the very least for them to be more inclusive of, models of color or people who reflect the body size of normal people, the average American but I don't think that it will turn out to be tokenizing, because I think a lot of people are grasping power now. And when it's not just one ad campaign, it's people being put in decision-making positions where they actually do have the power to make changes. It's still very small changes at this point. The leadership at any of these major, magazines or retail outlets or fashion labels are still overwhelmingly white, often male, even in an industry that is populated at the lower levels by women.
Wild.
But I also think the industry has a disproportionate ability to change the culture, not necessarily in politics, but in terms of how people see themselves in the world, whether they feel powerful or whether they have to spend their energy trying to make themselves fit into a very small mold that doesn't reflect the diversity of humanity. So that it gives me a lot of hope to see people taking power and recognizing their own power. As far as gender and fashion, that's really interesting, because I think this is something I think a lot about as a queer person, and just knowing so many people in my life who feel less confident because they can't find clothes that fit them properly in the style that they want to wear. I feel like a lot of quote unquote genderless clothing or, gender-free labels default to this middle ground of like very square silhouettes, baggy, muted neutrals, when actually what needs to happen is for there to be a wide range between masculine and feminine, and clothes at both ends of the spectrum manufactured in a lot of different sizes and shapes, so that like somebody with broad shoulders and no boobs can still fit into a sundress, or somebody with boobs and hips can fit into a suit. It's kind of incredible that we've like made so much progress in LGBTQ rights, and yet like clothing, which is full of so many queer people and queer positive people, has not kept pace. And again, like it would be a smart business proposition to just like sell your clothes to more people.
Podcasts are awesome. And I know you love them too, or you wouldn't be here right now. But have you ever thought about starting your own? Don't worry, you don't have to be a techie, but you do need a bit of guidance so you don't make costly mistakes. My name is Sunny, and I've been podcasting for a long time. I've launched more than 15 profitable podcasts, and I'm the founder of the Independent Podcast Network. My online course, How to Launch Your Profitable Podcast in 30 Days, gives you the keys to the 5 Ps of podcasting, which is everything you need to launch and grow a successful podcast. You get unlimited access to more than 35 videos and dozens of handouts. And when you purchase my course, you're also supporting this awesome podcast because they're getting 50% of the money when you use their special link. How cool is that? Let me help you get started with your podcast. Go to podcastareawesome.com/fashion. That's podcastareawesome.com/fashion.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think customization could really help there. Like some of the brands that like Bonobos, who will take the measurements. It's like, why not? You have the samples there, like more sustainable, less waste.
That's true. I hadn't even thought of that.
maybe something more on a larger scale. And I'm sure we'll get there because fashion folks are talking about it globally. Like, what can we do? What can we do? But similar to politics, sometimes it takes like, I don't know, like 500 panel discussions before legislation actually happens.
Yeah.
You know how it goes. But it's so
slow.
interesting. I want to bring it back to politics. I did cover fashion and politics for a while until 2016. And then I just said, I can't, in good conscience.
You made the right choice.
Move forward with this. And by the way, I loved your piece on Melania. Oh my God, I sent it to everyone. I knew. I was like, oh my God, like she did that on purpose. I had no idea. And clearly
that was my worst
politics,
fashion moment of the past 4 years. That I don't really care. Do you?
I was like, no, that was a mistake. Right. And so, I told my sister actually, when I read your piece, I felt like I did at the end of Get Out, because I didn't think, I didn't think she was in on it. So the scary part of the movie was the fact that I thought that she didn't know. And then I said, how many times do I do this as a
fool me once
in America? But anywho, so I was, everyone's like, free Melania. And then I was like, oh my God, like she totally,
she's in on it. But people just have the instinct still, even after, 53% of white women voted for Trump, because the backlash has been so full of women too. People just instinctually think like, how could a woman support this man? She must be, bullied into it, or she must be secretly traumatized by it. Like, no, actually, she's getting just as much out of it as he is. And there are plenty of women with no conscience and terrible political views.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, Stephanie, for spilling that tea in your book. She's a fashion gal who went over to the dark side for a minute, but she's back. So thank you for that tea. But, when I was covering fashion and politics, I thought it was so interesting how people would be like, oh my God, there's so much going on. How could you be focused on this and all? And I'm like, no. There's plenty of people who are focused on it. And I think it's important. I was just, my sister really, she made a great point when I was doing it. She's like, oh no, you're making it relatable, using fashion as sort of an outlet for people to learn about who these people are, because I didn't even know. So I was educating myself as I was looking. I was like, oh, like, who is this senator? What does she stand for? What is she doing? In addition to, oh, she wore this at her latest, press conference or whatever. Yeah. But I think, and just from that experience, and I mean, I don't understand why sometimes people don't make this connection, but I do think that, fashion and what especially women wear is like a superpower. I think it can be a powerful thing to exemplify who you are. Like, we have more creative outlets, for it than the men do. But that's a whole nother history lesson. They used to do
that's
some
another
crazy stuff,
reason why patriarchy harms men,
Sure
because
does.
They don't have the same sort of wide range of options for clothing as we do.
They don't.
Yeah.
Now they do have some, tailoring that I wish we had more of on our side, but that's neither here nor there. But, I think it goes back to what you were saying about, femininity and how that's often attached to fashion, making it seem like, oh, it's frivolous because it's attached to femininity. But I think that it can be a source of empowerment. Like, am I crazy?
Definitely. And I also think I've heard this from so many people as somebody who writes about fashion and politics, and sometimes fashion in politics.
Which I love.
Thank you. I'm glad that you are the perfect audience for it, actually. There's a lot of people who are like, oh, it's sexist to write about what the women candidates are wearing, or what, such and such a woman governor is wearing. But actually, I think it's a totally valid form of political analysis, because these are people whose whole lives are lived in public, and they're public figures of utmost importance in American life. And they spend a lot of time thinking about what they're going to wear, And so they are deliberately making a statement when they put on clothing. And, there's, when Hillary Clinton grew her hair out when she was Secretary of State and would wear ponytails and scrunchies, like, to me, that said, I am flying on planes a lot. I'm in foreign countries a lot without somebody to do my hair. This is my utilitarian hairstyle. Or, Elizabeth Warren during the Democratic primary was always wearing just sort of like flowing slacks and a cardigan. She wasn't in a suit, and she wasn't in a tailored dress. She was in something that she could run around in because she was campaigning. She sees herself as a woman of the people. And that was the image that she was projecting. It was completely deliberate. And, I want to call out Kirsten Sinema, who's a senator from Arizona, who, honestly, I some of her clothing choices I wouldn't make for myself, but she is one of the boldest dressers in the Senate. I almost don't care what she's wearing. The fact that it shows up from a pretty conservative state, historically conservative state, as a bisexual woman wearing her hair dyed blue and a fluffy pink jacket. I give her so much credit for that. And I don't always agree with her politically, but I feel fondly toward her because she's willing to be herself. That's a political decision she's making, especially in these incredibly slow moving, male dominated places of power. So, I just want to call out another fashion moment. Michelle Obama, when she left the White House, went on her book tour and wore those thigh-high sparkly boots.
Oh, she did that.
She
did that.
She's making a statement here. She is having so much fun now that she isn't beholden to this, the sort of right-wing microscope that forced her to be confined into this role when she was the first lady. Now she actually can express herself a little bit more. So I have so much fun looking at and it's not just women, obviously men make statements with their clothing too. There's just less to say about it in politics. But I hope that there's a male Kirsten Sinema someday, really.
Oh my goodness, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
And I honestly, I love what you said, and it just sort of stuck out about just being who you are sometimes and having the courage to express yourself is almost like an act of resistance,
Yeah, totally.
Everything that's happening. And just, even, today, you guys can't see it, but I have blue in my hair.
I can see it. It looks incredible.
I was like, I want a little blue in my hair. And that's how I'm feeling today. And, with everything going on in the world, I feel like I have more space to do so. And I feel empowered. So it's like, there's only one you, y'all. There's only one you. Be who you are. Take up that space. If I hear that one more time, my cousin says it all the time. Take up space. I love you, Sandra. Take up space.
It can't be said enough. It can't be said enough. Yeah. And I think especially, and this is political too, the way a lot of, if you go back into the history of fashion or why certain modes of dress are required in certain spaces, it's codes of decorum that left out certain groups of people. And if you are part of a demographic that has been historically marginalized or silenced or forced into these narrow boundaries of appropriate behavior, to dress in any kind of way that is true to you or that transgresses any of those boundaries really is a political statement of your right to be wherever you are.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad that, finally we've broken through the hair debacle. I mean, it's
oh my God.
Can we be natural, please?
Yeah,
finally.
Just some legislation passed about it's incredible that it took until 2020.
It's wild. And it's so crazy to see all the natural hair on the runways and, braids. And I'm like, braids? I mean, St. John's, I always, I remember a friend of mine, her mom would always buy St. John's knits, and, she had, more money than our family did. And so we'd go to the sample sales with her. And it was always sort of like this, Like, it's like piece of the American pie. I was up there with like the Brooks Brothers and, the upper crust of America, where's this? So, just the fact that they had like two like Black girls with their braids and hoops and St. John's knits. I said, oh my gosh, something's happening here. Like,
wow. Yeah. And it's like finally people like just the ability to let bodies be how they naturally are. I think like, I think that about, the ways that like the incredible power the fashion industry has to set norms for how, hair should look, quote unquote, should look, how bodies should look, how, young we're all supposed to yearn to be. And I think even subtle shifts in those incredibly harmful and restrictive norms could have far-reaching ramifications if we let it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a great point. But you have amazing genes, because I'll never forget when you told me the story. What, your grandmother? Is it your grandma who has the cocktail? Your grandma who has the cocktail and she's living her life?
Yeah, my great aunt who's 103.
Yes. I don't know. I envision her with her cocktail and her does she wear sunglasses? Like, what's her style like? Oh, yeah.
She's 103, has lost almost all of her sight, yet does a full face of makeup anytime she comes to a family gathering. She gets her hair done every week. That's like her, a very social outing for her. Keeps it dyed. Never seen her have a gray hair, and a lot of leopard print.
Yes, I love it. I
hope that I'm like Aunt Louise when I'm 103 and beyond.
Aunt Louise, I'm trying to channel all of that. So, this is a fashion moment. I gotta ask, what is your favorite fashion moment of all time? You mentioned a few really good ones, but it can be personal, professional, something you covered, just like a moment that was just like, oh.
I was going to say Beyonce at the 2016 Met Gala, where she had, I forget who designed the dress, but it was a latex dress. It was like a nude colored latex dress that it almost looked like an extension of her skin. And it had these like swollen kind of like reddish bumps. It was so grotesque. I was repulsed by it. And then I was won over by it. And the way she carried herself with that confidence. Anyway, but my own personal favorite fashion moment was one that I created, which was at my wedding last summer. I got this
beautiful.
On super sale. It was the only one left. This Dolce & Gabbana dress that was blue and silver, like tinselly fringe all over and big puff sleeves.
Is that who it was?
Yeah.
It was Dolce. I remember seeing it on social and I was like, shut the front door. Like, I cannot.
I spent probably like cumulatively like 40 hours searching the internet because I knew I had to make a statement for my wedding dress. This is the one time I could ever justify spending so much on a dress. I wanted to make a big statement. I wanted to be Tracee Ellis Ross for one day. And so I was like, I really held out. I got this dress, but then I took it to an incredible tailor in DC and had them take it into two parts because I'm really short and the bodice was way too long. And so she's like, well, to shorten the bodice, I'm going to have to take it into two parts anyway. Do you want me to just make a top and a skirt? And I was like, yes, definitely, because then I can wear it else like other times in my life. So then I was like, okay, wait a minute. I have an idea for a dramatic moment. So my wife and I did a surprise choreographed dance for our first dance where we faked everyone out dancing to At Last. And then we had the DJ like scratch the record and spin it into Waiting for Tonight by Jennifer Lopez and did a choreographed dance. The first thing that we did was my wife unzipped the skirt in the back and I whipped it off and I had a little like smaller silver skirt underneath. We spent so long choreographing this. It was literally the weekend before our wedding when like we really didn't have time choreographing a dance, but it was very important to us to make a dramatic moment happen at our wedding. And my little niece, my goddaughter, who was like 3, was like, Aunt Titi, why did you take your clothes off? Like, she was so confused. I'm like, it's for fashion.
Love
you'll
it.
understand when you're older.
It's for fashion.
It was like the one time in my life where I felt like it was appropriate to have a scene-stealing fashion moment like that. And I'll remember it fondly forever. Until, I get nominated for an Oscar or something.
Yes, yes. We are speaking it into existence.
Yes, I'm manifesting it.
Yes. Christina, thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for coming on the show. You are amazing.
Thank you for having me.
Obviously, you are always welcome back.
Would love to come back sometime.
Thanks so much for joining me for this week of A Fashion Moment. If you like what you hear, we'd love for you to join our community of listeners and spread the word about the show. We also want to hear from you. Share your favorite fashion moments and dream guests with us by sending an audio clip or email to afashionmomentpodcast@gmail.com. Or you can tag us on Instagram at A Fashion Moment, and you could be featured on next week's episode. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review and let us know what you think. Until then, see you next time for another fashion moment. Podcast production by Rebecca Rashid and John Taylor Williams. Digital media production by Megan Porras.
This recording carries a Creative Commons 4.0 international license. Thanks to Patrick Patricios for their song, Hot Coffee.